Welcome to this special episode of Midtown Madness. We're going to call this episode 4.5. This is going to be our A10 tournament preview episode, and we have a very special guest. Ross Chaifetz is going to join us to talk about the Billikens tournament draw and outlook for the next week and a half. And this episode starts right now. And now we're excited to welcome on for the first time to this show, the Midtown Madness podcast, my good buddy Ross Chaifetz. Ross, how we doing?
Good to be with you guys.
Well, we're gonna dive into the A10 tournament Monday night. Obviously, the Billikens beat the Minutemen, and St. Joe's pulled off a minor miracle in Richmond. And once again, the Billikens somehow find themselves grabbing the double bye on the last day of the season. Ross, man, what a night that was. A 1.5% chance.
That's what I saw, and a bunch of people making money off of parlays playing it as well.
Yeah, I was the one who put it out there, and I'm the one without the balls to make the play.
It always ends up that way. The ones you're afraid to take are the ones that pay out. But it's great. I mean, look, I can't say I expected it, honestly. Was hoping for it, had my fingers crossed. But I saw the spread on that St. Joe's Richmond game, and I didn't have much hope. But here we are, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think we should start out with the elephant in the room before we get into the SLU perspective, and we can talk about the SLU perspective on this specific note. VCU is going to get at least one home game in this tournament. I tweeted out, I don't see how this is even possible. It was the easiest thing to avoid.
Yeah, I don't see why they still can't flip it. Is there any reason they couldn't?
I'm guessing it has to do with the TV schedule, but I mean, you literally just put people on. You just put one side of the bracket in Richmond or at Richmond, and one side of the bracket at VCU, right? I mean, Ross, what do you think?
I think it's maybe a case of they assigned certain games to certain venues before the seedings actually shook out, and so they're looking at themselves now thinking, maybe we should have done it the other way around. I mean, to me, you reserve both venues for depending upon how the game scenario shakes out, you just reserve the venues, and then you essentially assign the teams to make sure that there is no home court advantage. Because I would have to think that they'd be a couple of steps ahead thinking about that sort of thing when you're hosting it in a city with two potential home teams.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like from moving it to Richmond to, then deciding, we're going to do the final a week later in Dayton. It just seems like they've kind of been flying by the seat of their pants. But diving into this draw, I mean, everybody and their moms is going to do a full draw breakdown of this tournament. I really want to focus on the draw for St. Louis. Ross, we'll start with Peter since I went with Ross last time. Pete, your initial reaction of kind of the Billikens' road to an NCAA tournament potentially?
Honestly, I think it's a pretty good draw. As in terms of what we were going to get out of this, there's a few teams that I wanted to avoid. We certainly don't. I mean, by getting the double bye, and then by getting UMass, LaSalle, and St. Joe's in that little kind of pocket there. We avoid some of the teams that scare me the most. So I think this is pretty good. It would be the semifinals before we saw anybody that was, truly threatening. I mean, UMass we just saw the other night. I have a hard time thinking that we don't know how to play them. And even though I think that game could have gone pretty differently, if Mitchell doesn't get in foul trouble in the first half, maybe it's closer at halftime, and you never know. But certainly the way that second half went, with Mitchell playing the whole time, they don't look too scary to me. And then, you've got LaSalle and St. Joe's playing in there. St. Joe's, which hasn't lost since January 30th, so I guess you never know. Anything can happen there. And LaSalle has only won once since they beat us several weeks ago. So overall, this looks pretty favorable to me, at least in the first couple rounds.
Ross, what do you think, man?
I think that's the right take. I mean, I'm looking at this bracket thinking, there's a high likelihood we have back-to-back games against teams that we beat, and both relatively recently. UMass, a team that, unless something drastically changes, I'm relatively confident we can handle a team like that. You look at St. Bonaventure, I don't see a lot of depth there. And I think that's where our advantage really comes into play. You look at our bench, you got a lot of guys stepping up at the right time. Some of our star players maybe haven't played as well as anticipated the last couple of weeks, but I think this is really the part of the season where depth comes into play. Agree with, Pete's take on the other side of the bracket. Most of the teams that I wouldn't want to get a look at in the quarters and the semis are really stacked on that side of the bracket. I mean, you look at like a VCU, you look at a Dayton who we've lost to twice this season. That's a team that, as much as I'd like to get revenge on them later in the season, it doesn't excite me playing a team that's kind of blown us out most recently. Davidson, I don't know what to make of them, frankly. I haven't watched them super closely, but Kellen Grady is always somebody that you never want to have to match up with. So I agree with Pete's take. I mean, I think we're on the right side of the bracket, and I really like our path. That being said, St. Joe's is hot at the right time. Do they make it all the way to us? I don't know. But, in that scenario where they've got their third game in a row, I like our depth, I like our coaching, and I like our talent. And we really only got to win 2 games in this scenario.
Yeah, I definitely think both of you are spot on. I think what's good is that we would potentially see St. Bonaventure in the second game in a back-to-back situation where they have to play 2 days in a row, whereas I would kind of be worried if, say, we were on the opposite side and Bonaventure would be the team to meet in the finals. Pete, who on the other side of that bracket are you most glad that you won't have to see until the finals potentially?
Probably if I had to pick one, it would be Dayton. I don't know what it is this season, but we just looked horrible against them. VCU, obviously we just saw that really close game, and we know we can hang with them. We know we can play with them. They're banged up. I think Bones is still day-to-day, right? I mean, we're probably going to see him in this tournament, but he might not be himself. Which isn't to say I don't think VCU would be a favorite. Obviously, they've got a better record. They've got a higher net ranking. They've got a higher position in the conference. But Dayton just seems to have our number this year. The other team, there's 3 teams on this side of the bracket that we haven't seen at all yet this year. I don't think George Washington is going to be a factor. George Mason has actually kind of won some games lately and is quietly in the top half of this conference. And then Davidson, another kind of quiet season, but they're number 3. They between Grady and Lee, they can really shoot it. They're an efficient scoring team. They play excellent defense. They're probably the best overall defensive team in the conference. So Davidson is a team, especially based on how we played them last season. I don't like that matchup for us. I think McKillop's a great coach, and that seems like a sneaky, tough draw. So it'll probably be one of those 3 teams, VCU, Dayton, or Davidson, who we see on the other side if we do make it to next weekend. And I think all 3 of them kind of present a different challenge.
You pointed out next weekend, and I've said it's kind of crazy already that we've moved that we have the final a week later. What do you guys think of that? I mean, is it something to make anything of, or do you think that it'll just kind of be business as usual?
I mean, to me, I frankly don't understand why they did it. I mean, I guess there's an argument to be made that they want to host the final at a site where I guess the team can kind of isolate and lock down heading into the tournament. But to me, if I'm in that scenario, it just doesn't feel like the right way to hold a conference tournament. I mean, part of the magic of a conference tournament is winning consecutive games, and that's why it made it so exciting when we did it a couple of years back. There's just something different about winning, 2 games or 3 games and then having a week off to prepare for one opponent. There are going to be a lot of different factors that come into play, and maybe that means that coaching becomes more important when you've got a week off versus the depth that may be the critical factor when you're playing 3 or 4 games consecutively. I guess I'm not quite sure what to make of it yet, and frankly, I'm pretty confused about the intention behind it. I do think that it gives an unfair advantage to a team who's hosting the final. But look, the A10 obviously doesn't give a damn about that when they're placing the conference tournament essentially in the home city of two of the favorited teams in the conference. So I'm not really sure what to make of it at this point. Does it give a unique advantage to some folks? Absolutely.
Pete?
Zach, do you think there's any truth to the speculation that they might be offering some of the teams that don't make it to the final a chance to pick up another game somewhere? Could that be any, the reason?
Yeah, I think that might be a reason. I just don't. It's hard to. It's such like an oddly specific scenario that I don't know if I could see it happening, because it would have to be a team like if Bonaventure gets the doors blown off them in their first game of the tournament, or VCU also. It would have to be one of the top 4 seeds getting the doors blown off. It's not going to be Dayton. Nobody else in this conference has a chance to make the tournament at an at-large bid. So I mean, even Davidson really doesn't, that I'm aware of. But I just don't. It's such an oddly specific scenario. I don't see it. But I wanted to ask you guys, straight up, you look at the draw leading into our game. Who do you think we will play on Friday at 1 p.m.? And why?
Pete, go ahead.
And why?
I got to go UMass. I'm tempted to pick St. Joe's just because they've kind of had a little magic lately. But I think it's going to be UMass. I think they're just too talented, even though things haven't quite come together for them this season, kind of like their fans had hoped and like some of us thought it would. They just have too much talent to ignore. And Mitchell is kind of the big question mark for me, because he really killed us last season. And then in this past game the other night, he kind of I don't want to say he disappeared, but he didn't play with a whole lot of energy in that second half. And I don't know if he just kind of got disheartened as we went on that run. But there's a little part of me that wonders if he's already thinking about next year and maybe just trying not to get hurt. I have no idea where his head's at, because personally I think he probably should be. That's all the more reason to play a little harder, maybe get into the postseason and get some more eyes on you, some more scouts seeing what you can do. But he might be thinking their odds are too long, and maybe he's just packing it in. So I don't know what's going on there, but I think they have enough talent to overwhelm either St. Joe's or LaSalle. St. Joe's they can't defend at all. They'll shoot a ton of threes and anything can happen, but they're a horrible defensive team. And then LaSalle just hasn't been good since they beat us. They've never really regained that 3-point shooting stroke. So I think it'll be a UMass rematch.
I think that's probably right. In a round robin scenario between like LaSalle, St. Joe's, and UMass, my answer may be different, but I think it's tough for a St. Joe's or a LaSalle team to come out of that pillow fight and then knock down a UMass, the day after. I like the take on Trey Mitchell. On Mitchell, I think he's great. I got to think we're playing UMass, and I like that matchup. There's nothing wrong with that. Frankly, I'm more scared of St. Joe's right now than I am UMass. I like that. I like that matchup.
There's so much chaos in this conference. It is parity central. Anybody can win on any night. And I don't think that the national media truly realizes that. It's pretty crazy. The Billikens are going to win this tournament. Who has got to step up?
Just stop at that. Just stop at that.
Yes.
End the episode.
Yes. Stop the count. The Billikens are going to win this tournament. Who besides the main three is going to have to step up? I'm talking Perkins, Goodwin, French. Who's going to have to step up on the score sheet? Ross? Who's going to be our MVP that's not the top three?
I could tell you who I think it is going to be. I could tell you who I would like it to be. Each answer is a little bit different. I've seen a lot out of Fred Batch lately that I've really, really liked. He's finally turned into the guy that coach has told us the last year or two he could be. He's hitting nice shots. He's rebounding incredibly aggressively, and he's playing with a team mentality. I'd love to see Gibson Jimerson step up and kind of average 12 points throughout the tournament. But I haven't really been confident in our ability to create plays for him lately. It's a tough question to answer, though, because we got so many guys who can step up at any moment. I mean, Demarius Jacobs, the first half of the season, was a star. He's been relatively quiet lately. It's tough because you got to shuffle minutes and you got to satisfy a lot of guys. But, you got to go with what works. And lately, I think we've been seeing a lot out of Fred Thatch that's been really, really positive. I also like Martin Linson. I mean, there's a lot of guys to go with here. In terms of what's trending, though, I think my answer would be Fred Thatch. I'd love to see Gibson get a couple more looks drawn up for him. I'd love to see him hit some threes consecutively and push us back into the 70 to 80 point average.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of those answers. Gibson's the guy I would like to see come back from the slump, and then Thatch is the one who has just been so clutch lately. It's not just the things he's doing; it's kind of when he's doing it. When we came out in that second half, and I think Fred hit he had the steal. Which came first, the steal and a dunk, and then he hit a three?
He hit the
I think it was the three.
The three and then the dunk, yeah.
Okay, so those were the third through seventh points of what eventually became a 13-0 run. So it was really him that kind of sparked that run with those two big plays. And then the game before, obviously, when he hit that huge three from the corner, that really made it that really put us in a good position to win that one. So he's not just been playing with more confidence and doing a little bit of everything, but he's been so clutch. So I have to agree with that pick as the next most valuable guy. What are you thinking, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, the dude is playing with so much swagger, not only confidence, but swagger. I mean, he stared down our bench when he dunked that ball. He stared down the other team when he hit that three. You watch him and he's smiling throughout. He is the smiling assassin right now. He's coming on so strong, and I think that's part of the reason you're seeing Jimerson lose time and maybe lose confidence, because you have a guy in Thatch that can do a bit of what Jimerson does, but also bring a lot more on and also why you're seeing less of Demarius too, because again, Demarius shoots threes and can defend, brings athleticism. Fred Thatch starting to warm up from three, brings a defense, better defense maybe, and even more athleticism. So I think he's putting Travis in a tough spot with his lineups, and I think it's going to be hard to keep Fred Thatch off the court. So I want to get your guys' predictions. Take your heart out of it. Think with our head here. What do you think is going to happen, Pete, in this tournament?
I like us to win the first game, no matter who it is. I like what we're doing lately. I think any of those three, I think we can handle them. The second game's definitely where it gets harder. Richmond has not impressed me at all lately. Bonaventure, we beat them by 10 earlier this season. We kind of see how it can be done. They like Ross said earlier, they have no depth. They do. Everything comes from those top five. They don't shoot a ton, but they shoot pretty well. Lofton's actually been kind of cold this year, but everybody else is shooting pretty well. They play great defense, and they're going to hit us with that kind of pressing zone trap to slow the game down, because they know they're not deep, and they want to play a slow game. So that's why they're leading the A10 in a lot of defensive numbers, just because they're really going to slow it down. But again, I think I'm not all that afraid of them. The X factor for me on that side is Duquesne. That's a team that owned us twice last year, and Weathers is their leading scorer, and we had huge problems with him. A lot of people forget because Williams went off for 40 last year in that duel with Tremaine Isabel. But quietly, Weathers had 26 in that game. So I think a lot of people forget that, and just how good he's been against us. If Richmond or Bonaventure come out of that one, I really like us. If Duquesne comes out, I'm a little more nervous. But yeah, I think we're definitely in the finals of this one, and it really depends on who comes out of the other side. I think we're going to make the final, though. Are we going to win it? I'll call that a coin flip.
Ross, what are we thinking?
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better. I mean, Duquesne is the X factor. They're well coached. They had our number last year. I like us against any of the three teams that we could meet on Friday. Richmond, to your point, Pete, I'm relatively confident we can beat them up a little bit. I've liked that we've gone bigger lately. I think that matches us up well against Richmond. I'm confident against them. St. Bonaventure, I think, we've kind of been there and done it, and that's something that we can reflect on, and our guys will be confident going into that game. Duquesne is an opponent that I'm not sure of. But, if I'm taking my Billiken fandom out of the mix, and if I'm a total outsider looking at this conference, and I'm asking myself, who wins and losses aside, if I'm looking at just rosters and talent, who's the most talented team top to bottom in the Atlantic 10? I don't know how you can say it's not us. And I think that's a critical factor when it comes to conference tournament time. Obviously, the big question mark is COVID and its effect on us. And we've shown an ability to come back and kind of win one or two straight. Can we do it consistently when it matters? I don't know. I hope we can. I think we're the best team in the bracket, top to bottom. If we played a full season, I think we'd be looking at a 1 or a 2 seed versus a 3 or a 4 seed. That's what I truly believe. I think we'll come out of our side of the bracket. I'm relatively confident in that. On the other side, I think it's one of 3. I think it's VCU, Davidson, or Dayton. And I just don't know how to react to that potential matchup at this point. Bones Highland potentially coming back. That's a team we already lost to. Arguably, we should have won. The reffing was a factor there. But with Bones Highland coming back, you just don't know what that looks like. Dayton, I would love to say I'm confident we can handle them, but, at home in a final, who knows how that looks. So I think I'd put our money on the Billikens, advancing out of our side of the bracket. But you never know this time of year. Teams can get hot. And, it's challenging to win consecutive games. It really, really is. And we saw the magic behind that a couple years back when we won 4 in a row. So who knows if we'll strike gold again. But I think the bracket really does trend in our favor. And again, I think top to bottom, we're the most talented team in the league. The question is, can we match up right against our opponents? And that comes down to coaching and X's and O's. And can we play our game? I mean, really, we've only, reflecting on our season and our losses this year, I mean, it's kind of cheesy to say this, but we've really only lost to ourselves. With the exception of the Dayton game where we were absolutely blown out. I don't even know what happened there. I frankly turned it off at halftime. But, we've only lost to ourselves. So can we step up to the plate? Can we win the game? If we win the games we need to win, we'll be the Atlantic 10 Conference Championship. That's what I believe.
The funny thing is I'm most excited that if we can make it to the final, we're going to have a chance to do a full episode on the final. That's like why I'm excited, which is really nerdy. One more question to both of you. One word answer. Who comes out of the other side and who are the Billikens going to have to beat in that final?
ECU.
I got to go with VCU. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's VCU, and I'd actually rather play them than Davidson. I think just because it's an unknown property. But anyway, it's going to be a hell of a ride. The Billikens begin their quest for an NCAA tournament bid Friday, noon Central Time on NBC Sports Network, my favorite outlet for A10 basketball. I'm excited. I know you guys are excited. Ross, thank you for joining us. It's good to finally get you back on the pod and whatever pod we're on, So
I appreciate it. And I'm heading out to Richmond, so I'm gonna be on the ground this week. I'm reporting live.
All right, maybe we'll do a little mobile Zoom or something.
There we go.
All right, Ross, take it easy, man.
Appreciate it, guys. Good to see you both.
Thank you so much to Ross Chaifetz for coming on, and hopefully we get some fun content out of him being in Richmond, and maybe I'll be in Dayton for even more fun content if we get that far. But we're going to do a quick rundown of the women's tournament because we are an equal opportunity podcast. We love the women's basketball team. I think I can speak for Peter to say that we're both very excited to see what they can do. The Billikens are heading in as a 3 seed. They finished just behind Fordham and number 1 Dayton. On their side of the bracket, you're looking at an 11-14 matchup between George Washington and George Mason that feeds into number 6 Richmond. I think St. Louis Fordham's coming off a long pause, man. I don't know if 2 games is gonna. It'll be interesting to see.
And they're definitely playing. They've been cleared.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good.
I know the men are ready to go. Women. Nobody, unfortunately, tweets about that. So I think that Frank is his name. There's one guy on A10 Twitter that reports on the women's basketball in the conference, which is pretty awesome. But
right.
So the women are going to play at 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus on Friday, March 12th. And they will take on the winner of George Mason, George Washington, and Richmond. They are luckily, they're on the other side of the bracket. And I think the team has a chance to win this tournament.
Yeah, this is about – if they're going to do it, this is about as good a draw as they could have gotten. Going on this 7-game win streak, they're the hottest team in the A10 right now. They put themselves in a great position. Now they're 3 seeds. So George Washington, George Mason, I don't think either of those scare them at the moment. And then Richmond would be the number 6 seed that they would play, and they're pretty solid. But I don't know. Richmond's coming off 2 losses, I just got to think SLU out of that pod. I don't think anybody is a huge challenger there.
George Mason I don't think has won a game yet, so I think we can.
Yeah, they're horrible. Right. So it'll be George Washington and Richmond, and I don't know, probably Richmond out of those 2. But SLU won a good defensive battle over them recently. Yep. And I think, if the offense is clicking at all, I think they can put Richmond away by even more next time.
Yeah, I think women's basketball is interesting because the seeds generally hold. There isn't a whole lot of parity historically. And so you're most likely going to see Dayton play either VCU or Rhode Island. Rhode Island VCU might be the one game that I don't know if it can be called before it starts. But I would place money on the idea that it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, and or 5. So, Billikens showed they could beat everybody but Fordham, I think. So,
yeah. But their game against Fordham was right. It was in the beginning of the conference season.
Yes, it was off the pause. It was right off the pause.
That's right. That's right.
Good point. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so for Fordham, actually, they've won technically their last 5, but they've had so many cancellations in between and postponements that it's really hard to know what they're going to look like. They've got what is this here? How many weeks were they shut down? Because they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 postponements or cancellations heading into this one. And then they had them kind of scattered throughout the year before that. So
that poor team, man.
Yeah, it's just impossible to know who's gonna be there on that night. Fordham's a good team. They're just, you don't know what you're going to get off of COVID pause, as we know very well.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen here is I think it's going to be the Billikens and the Flyers in the final. I think the Billikens will roll Richmond, and Fordham, I'm not sure if they'll be ready to go. I think Dayton beats everybody they play. VCU could be a tough one. VCU posed a problem for them earlier in the season. I don't remember if they ended up winning that game, but I know it was close. So I'm excited for this to get going. It starts Wednesday, March 10th, the first round, the pillow fight, if you will, and then goes through the 14th. So it's a classic conference tournament. So if you want your classic tournament set up, check out the women's game. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up here for your A10 your A10 basketball championship preview. I'm ready to go here. Got the reigning A10 champion St. Louis Billikens are heading in as the 4 seed, and the women are looking for their first ever NCAA tournament bid in program history. It's going to be a fun next week or so. I can't wait. I got my alarm set for 10 a.m. tomorrow. I'm ready for some basketball. How about you?
Can't wait. I'm excited.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter, Midtown Mad Pod. And I am at Zach Miller, ZACMILLER, MMP, and Peter is at Peter is a Tweeter, which is my second favorite Twitter name of all time. I don't really know what my first is. I just know it's my second. But yeah, so make sure you're following us on there. Get at us on YouTube. You can find us everywhere podcasts are. And thank you guys so much for listening. We've gotten great feedback and excellent numbers so far. So look forward to talking to you guys after the Billikens win on Saturday.
Thanks, Zach.
Yep, have a good one.